Well, it's always a pleasure to speak with Representative Jeffrey Elmore, representing, of course, Alexander and Wilkes County, District 94 in the North Carolina House of Representatives. Representative Elmore, you were my first guest when we launched this show, and it's good to have you back here in the House.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I was the very first one. I'm always excited to do this. I appreciate the time with you.
Um, of course, you know I'm going to ask you about the racetrack. How's that going?
Oh, it's going great. I drove by there yesterday on the way into town. Even though the weather was kind of yucky, they've got the lighting system up, which is extremely exciting. And they are having a suite being built where the original scorekeeping took place. And what was interesting about that original building, the building was not built square because it needed to have the correct viewpoint of the finish line to be able to document proper scoring. That building could not be salvaged, so they're replacing it with a steel structure building that will house media and suites, and it actually will have a rooftop viewing on it, which is an exciting addition to the track.
Wow. Won't that be something to ride by there and hear those engines?
Oh, it'll be unbelievable. You won't necessarily have to ride by there because the way it reflects off the mountains, you hear it all over town. So it's good stuff.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. Well, I wanted to speak with you a little bit about education today. You're involved in that here in the North Carolina House of Representatives. And I was realizing after I came up with this question, I can't really get you to nail down a dollar amount because that would change every year. But what's interesting to me, Representative Elmore, and I know you're a teacher, so I got to tread lightly here, but several years ago, I had the opportunity to interview then outgoing Superintendent June Atkinson. And I asked her, I said, at that time, I'm sure you recall, there was just all this every year talking about teacher pay, and, the mean old Republicans don't want to pay the teachers and all that kind of stuff. And I asked her, I said, Superintendent Atkinson, what would you like to see? How much is enough? And she wouldn't commit to a dollar amount, and I don't expect you to. But the truth is that the Republican majority in the General Assembly has raised teacher pay consistently over the last decade. Do you feel like, from where you sit as someone making those decisions, are we doing enough? I know you'd like to probably do more, but what are your thoughts on teacher pay here in 2023?
Well, since you went back in time a little bit, I'll go back in time a little bit too, because there's so many external factors that dictate what we need to do with teacher pay. And when the Republicans first took the majority, what was happening was out of control budgeting from the Democrats. You had increases of their budget of 15% some years, 12%, consistently year after year after year. It becomes unsustainable, especially if there's an economic downturn. Well, the economic downturn hit in 08. And what their immediate reaction was, because of the massive growth with the state budget as a whole, was they just froze salaries, just froze them in time. And I lived in that as a teacher. I've taught school for 23 years at this point.
Wow.
And I lived in pay freezes because you have to update the pay scales each biennium with the teachers. So I've lived in that world. So it was either feast or famine. It was according to what was happening politically. Ooh, we're going to get a raise. And then if the economic situation varied any whatsoever, we would know that our pay would be frozen at that time. So one of the biggest things that we did as Republicans when we first came in, we unfroze the pay scales. That was probably one of the biggest pay raises that I received because I was frozen for several years.
Wow.
So our approach over this past decade is we need to look at teacher pay and we need to make it grow and keep it to where it's not frozen, basically, where you have consistent growth that deals with the cost of living. Now, we've had some different factors as time has moved along. We set a goal for ourselves that we wanted to be one of the highest in the Southeast, if not number one. Our biggest competitor has been Georgia because of their massive growth in Atlanta. And as Atlanta is growing, the bar keeps on getting moved because they're having to raise their pay to attract the folks into the teaching profession. I think what we're facing in 2023 right now is a couple of factors that seem kind of counterproductive, but this is just what's happening. We are about to face a recession, a downtick in the economy. So we have to be very careful on what we do budgetarily as the whole picture, which salaries is a big chunk of it. But at the same time, we have a labor market that is not reflecting a recession. The labor market is extremely strong and it's extremely tight. I mean, it's highly competitive, and private sector folks will tell you the exact same thing. It is hard to get people into positions, and it's hard to find people with specific skill sets. Because of that, we have massive pressure right now on being able to retain and attract teachers because they can go to a private sector job that definitely doesn't have the stress level, and they're qualified for because of their education level, and they can receive more pay. We also have another twist, inflationary pressure right now. Even though the Fed keeps on raising interest rates to try to control it, we are still under, I would consider it massive inflation pressure. Mm-hmm. The number that we use to develop the budget as a whole is inflation plus population. We call that the Tabor number. And the number we're using for that is a 6.5% inflation. I think the inflation is probably worse than that in actuality, but that's the way that the metric is figured. So I think the focus that we've got to have this year with teacher pay is how are we going to keep our employees whole? They are suffering from the inflationary pressure. The eggs are $8 a dozen. The food costs are high. Gas is staying consistently high. It's not dipping down to pre-Biden years where it was under $2 a gallon. It's consistently staying up. So just basic daily cost of living is increased for our employees. What can we do to fill that gap? If we can fill that gap, they will have the same amount of buying power that they had prior to this massive inflation uptick. Also, too, I feel like it will help with retention. Those are the things that I'm focused on now. It's almost like we have to focus on what's happening on the immediate with teacher pay, and then ideas for adjustments or total transformation and those kind of things need to be put off for a while until our economy stabilizes again.
Well, you know, as the chairman of the House Education Appropriations, I think it's your answer says to me that you're taking this very seriously, very thoughtfully, very pragmatically, and I, for one, as a citizen, appreciate that. I think sometimes, as you indicated, politicians, as it were, they get caught up in spending other people's money, and they don't realize the long-term effects. So I appreciate what you're doing and all of the thought that you're putting into that very challenging question. And certainly, hats off. As you said, the stress level. Our teachers are certainly, they definitely need to be appreciated for all that they do with our children and kids all across our state. There's no question about that. Wanted to shift gears a little bit more, still on education, but I'm seeing a lot of bills come across, local bills. Such and such a school district wants to change their calendar, such and such a school district changing their calendar. And I don't know if you go back as far as I do, but when I was a kid, we went to school up to Memorial Day. We got 3 months off, and then we went back after Labor Day. All of a sudden, they don't work no more. And I'm not sure what happened, but what's going on with all, I know the state has a calendar, but all these districts, it seemed like, want to, make an exception. And from where you sit, what are we doing there? What's going on?
Well, I think it's just like anything else that there's different factors that have led up to this. Years ago, we were extremely agriculturally based. Most folks even lived on small farms just to sustain their family. So the calendar at that time was a reflection of that. The locals made sure that kids got out in time to be able to help with cash crops, to help on the farm. And basically, once the growing season was winding down, it was time to go back to school. So that's kind of the development of what we call a traditional school calendar. Now, things have changed a lot since then. We have opportunities for kids to go to the community college while they're in high school. We have experimentation with year-round schools, especially in our urban areas. So there's a lot of different factors. I think the key here is a lot of systems want local control. They want to be able to dictate that, not the state level. And a lot of the concerns I hear are the alignment with the community college calendar to make sure that the high schoolers that are participating in college classes are able to make that alignment. Another issue is, when are the first semester exams given? On the calendar that the state dictates, most of the time that will happen about the second week of January. So because of that, many want to push those before Christmas because they think that they can perform better. Also, too, with a lot of mandates that come down and different pressures on the teacher, how do you build in staff development days into your calendar where the teacher does have enough time to be able to do clerical type things like grading, entering grades in the computer, but also attend staff developments that we feel are important, like our Read to Achieve Act, where the teacher is having to go through what's called letters training. So all of those factors are putting pressure on systems on how do you develop a calendar that meets all of those needs and actually the public likes. So that's kind of the issues on that side. But then the issues on the other side are, a huge part of our economy statewide is tourism. And that is a growing sector statewide. I live up towards the mountains, but it is critical on the coast. Some of our municipalities and counties there, they are dependent on the summer season. Without it, they would not exist. So that's where the conflict happens. They want to make sure that the summer season is as long as it possibly can be to be able to attract those visitors into their community and they can spend money. It also applies up in my area. I mean, the summer months with outdoor activities, folks visiting our state parks, visiting rock climbing facilities, driving on the Blue Ridge Parkway, all of that. Yeah. When they have free time, they're able to do it. And I think that we really saw the economic impact of schools being open or closed during COVID, because when our schools were closed, the economic dynamic totally changed. Folks were not traveling as much. They were not going into the stores. It was more online ordering. So the opening and closing of schools does directly affect the economy. Yeah. So those are kind of the two different pressure points on each side of the issue.
And you signed up for this.
Oh yeah, I did.
Well, nobody said it was going to be easy, I reckon. Speaking of things that aren't easy, I wanted to touch briefly on a kind of a somber subject. The Child Fatality Task Force at the end of February came out with startling youth suicide numbers, that they were the highest in 2 decades. As an elected official, you got to look at something like that and go, my gosh, what do we do? So what kind of thoughts do you have when you see a number like that or a statistic like that come across your desk?
Well, first, it's extremely sad. I think what our youth are facing right now is very different than anything you or I faced going through. I think a lot of it plays with technology and the role of social media and the interaction of kids through that. It is immediate. It is very short. A lot of times it does not have what I would call interpersonal contact, where you're actually reading people's body language. You're actually trying to relate to them by being there in person. And there's a lot of times not a lot of explanation to whatever's being posted, may it be through Snapchat or some of the other apps that the kids use. So I call it being turned on all the time. It's years ago, I think about my stepdaughter in this situation. Let's say that she had a sleepover, and all the girls are there all at one time. So they're interacting. Those social pressures, etc., are there. But when the girls went home the next morning, there was kind of a pressure point that went down. She could recoup, kind of not be what I call turned on all the time, where she's having to engage. Now kids, because of social media, that they are in that social construct that is developed at their age 24/7. It's
Wow.
never turned off because it's so digital heavy. I think that's an issue, but at the same time, how do you control that issue? Because that's people's choice. I think steps that we could do, a bill that I filed, and it got a number last week, H-253, and it's called the Prevent Students from Harm Act. And what this does, this targets our health curriculum. And one of the main objectives statutorily for the health curriculum is mental health. And what I'm adding in this bill is saying mental health and specific strategies, signs of suicide, to where a kid through their health classes can understand that these are the signs of a person who is having a suicidal thoughts or is in a severe depression, to where hopefully it will help teach the kids to become a little bit more self-aware, that they could self-indicate, hey, I am, things are not going quite right. And I really need to talk with someone because I think that I could be going down this path. I think that's one way that government can help with this. Also, home communication at home with the kids, I think, is something that parents, I know myself as a parent, I need to work better at it. I think other parents need to work better in that realm of communicating with their kids, not just through the technology, but actually face to face. Ask them how things are going, asking them how school was today, and really try to get an answer out of them, not just, oh, it's fine, but what was something positive that happened today? What was something negative? Really try to engage with their kid to see where they're going, and that will help with this. But this is a scary statistic that I think us culturally as a whole society really need to pay attention to.
Well, I appreciate the thoughtfulness again that you are putting into something that, as you said, is extremely sad. As we wind up our time together here, and I appreciate Representative Elmore, you being our guest here on In the House. I have heard Speaker Moore talk about we're going to get this budget out from the House, try to get it. I've heard targets of around spring break time. That seems a little aggressive to me, but hey, give us a little inside scoop. Where do we stand? Are we looking good to meet a more targeted presentation of the House budget, or things bogging down, or how are y'all doing?
Sure. It is moving very fast, Mark. As you can see, I'm here on a Monday talking with you. I don't have my tie on, so it's kind of like casual Monday, because as one of the full appropriations chairs, we are dealing with this directly. We have been working on what I call the big numbers, things like salary, health benefit, those big, massive numbers with our employees that really dictate the budget. I feel like those have been in a good place. They're not 100% firmed up, but I feel like they're about 98% firmed up. Wow. Now the other pieces of the puzzle will start fitting together. We'll be meeting with subcommittees this week. They'll be giving us their initial reports. We issued them a target down into the different categories like general government, JPS, the different categories of the budget, and they've been working on it last week. So we'll get their first report. So I think meeting the Speaker's goal of trying to get this done the week prior to Easter. I think we will meet the goal, but
Wow.
it has been very fast paced. It's a lot of information, and it is taken a lot of, I want to call them quick decisions. But the full appropriators, most of us have been doing this before, so it's not new territory for us. I hope that we don't get bogged down this week with the subcommittees and their reports, because sometimes those can be easy and sometimes those can be hard. So we'll just see at the end of the week. Now, if you ask me next Monday, I may give you a different answer than today, but
Exactly.
that's where we're at as of Monday, whatever today's date is.
Yeah, we're looking good on March 13th. Well, Representative Elmore, as always, thank you for being my guest, and hope that everything will go well for you this weekend, and things will be smooth sailing for getting the budget put together.
Oh yeah, smooth sailing. Hey, it will move regardless. So we are moving forward, and I appreciate your time, Mark. I always love sharing with you.
Thank you. You have a great day.
Yes, you too.
Bye-bye.